My respects, Admiral. Delighted to have you aboard, Namza.
Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats on the upper deck for the demonstration of the aircraft.
Hello, I'm Pavel Douglas. I play the captain of the warship in GoldenEye, and you're listening to the Real 007 podcast.
Welcome, everybody, to the Really 007 podcast. I'm John Kell, and we are here for a special interview with Mr. Pavel Douglas. Pavel starred as the French warship captain in one of our favourite films, GoldenEye, which is currently celebrating its 30th anniversary. You can watch all our interviews on our YouTube channel, but you can also listen to them and much more on iTunes, Spotify, and please subscribe and leave a lovely review there if at all possible. We're also on Facebook, X, and Instagram, where you can find daily interaction between Bond fans all over the world. But today we are here with Pavel, so I just want to say thanks for being with us. How are you, Pavel?
I'm fine. I'm very welcome. Thank you, and thank you for having me.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for wanting to come on. So we're going to talk a bit about GoldenEye, but we just want to start a bit about your career as well. So just tell us a bit about your background, about how you grew up, and how you got into acting, if that's all right.
Okay, well, I was originally born in... Well, originally, of course, I was born in Poland. My mother went over there after the war. She married an up-and-coming actor who then became a huge film star. His name was Stanisław Zaciek, and he was in many of the Andrzej Wajda films. I grew up seeing him on stage and also seeing him on the big screen as a little child. And then at the age of 5, my mother took me away from Poland. I came to England. I was brought up in England. I was brought up in Scotland, and I went to school in Scotland. I went to school in France. We went all over the place. You know, a single woman in the 50s bringing up a child on her own wasn't easy. But it was just acting was just one of those things that was in my blood. My grandfather, that's to say my mother's father, he had been an actor, and he'd been an actor manager between the wars. He was John Gielgud's first producer. And I did have, until it was stolen from during a burglary, I had a wonderful scrapbook which included all the names of some of the greatest stars of the time there. My grandfather, didn't want me to be an actor. He wanted me to be a journalist, and he already had a desk lined up for me with Thomson Press in Dundee. But that's the last thing I wanted. When I told him no, I didn't want to do that, I was going to follow in my father's footsteps. I was kind of excommunicated from the family, which I didn't think was very helpful, but there we go. My first television role when I was 15 and I was still at school.
Wow.
And I remember it was a BBC production called The Highland Jaunt. And it was all about Johnson's trip around the Highlands when he was putting his books together. And I just had a very small part, but it was lovely, and it was in my veins then. Although the headmaster did call my mother in and go, "Make sure it doesn't happen again, Mrs. Douglas," you know. Many years later, I stood outside the school, and this is after I'd done loads and loads of stuff. And I turned up outside the school in Edinburgh, and I stood in front of the whole school and just gave him the, you know, just to prove that I could do it. But I'd done it, so there we go.
Oh, it's fantastic. So, like, it sounds from a very early age, you had that kind of steel mentality that you're going to prove that you're going to do this. You're going to prove everybody wrong. And you've been in like lots and lots of things throughout the years. One of the things that I looked at was Robin of Sherwood. And in that, there are so many like Bond alumni in that. There's obviously George Baker, Jeremy Bulloch, Jason Connery, and of course Wayne Michaels, who did the famous bungee jump at the start of GoldenEye itself. So,
indeed, so.
Tell us a bit about your time on Robin, and maybe some of the your experiences with those actors.
Well, you know, all this is a long time ago now, but funny you should talk about Robin, because in fact I've just done 2 episodes of a Robin podcast.
Oh, right.
Which I'm going to get my notes here, because it's just been released and it's available to listen to. It was great fun working on Robin. I mean, I love riding horses. I always have since I was a child. And this is an anecdote that I often tell about people say, well, what's one of your favorite bits of acting that you've ever done? It wasn't so much acting, it was just riding a horse. And it was chasing some baddies through the woods because I played the captain of the sheriff's guard, so
Right.
essentially I wasn't a very nice guy. So I was Gisborne's right hand man. But on one episode, I remember I had to chase people through the woods, and they were hiding in the woods, and they'd felled some trees, and there were fires burning in the woods, and I had to jump over a small a stream on the horse, and it was a wonderful horse, and I had a billowing sort of purple cloak and a crossbow in one hand, and I was and thundering through the in between the trees, and I could hear on the megaphone, "All right, cut, go again." I was going, "Can we just go again, go again, go? We just do this all day long, just riding through the woods, pretending to be who I was." It was great, great fun. I listened to some of the episodes yesterday. Rula Lenska's in
Oh,
one.
wow. Yeah.
Um, and I think that I did one with who played the sheriff? Very, very famous actor was in Nicholas Grace, of course.
Oh, okay.
Nicholas Grace and I did an episode together. Then we did this podcast episode together. So
Did you have any experience with the likes of Wayne Michaels on set or
I
John?
didn't, no. I mean, I may have done, but I didn't. I didn't take that on board at the time. You're focused on what you're doing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, Clive Mantle is still a good chum.
Yeah.
I did episodes with Michael Praed and with Jason Connery.
Wow.
Mm.
Wow. What was it like working with Jason Connery?
Just another guy. We just get on with it. People always think, well, what are these people like? They're just ordinary. We're ordinary. We're terribly ordinary.
I think for us who like us Bond nerds, we're so starstruck by these names that we do forget that, as you say, ordinary people as such.
Pierce is incredibly ordinary and really lovely, but we'll come to that, I'm sure, later in the conversation.
Obviously, you played the role of Gregory Mantle in EastEnders.
Yeah,
You are
Mantell.
Mantell. I apologize.
Gregory.
I was one when this was released.
Oh well, whoa.
Forgive me.
Okay.
Yeah. But
This is why you've got black hair and I've got grey hair. You see, there we go.
you look very good for your age. Very, very good.
Yeah,
though.
this is for this is for an upcoming film that I'm starting filming at the end of this month. So I've grown this specially.
It looks fantastic. It could also be the Monopoly man. With
Pierce did have this look for a while. I noticed on some of the photographs when you look at it.
he absolutely did, and he rocks it. He looks brilliant with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Gregory Mantell and the man responsible for the apparent assassination of Dirty Den. So
Yes, well, I mean, everyone says, "Oh, you're the guy who shot Dirty Den." Well, I should point out that I had him shot,
yes,
not entirely the same thing. And I always say to people, had I done it had I shot him, I'd have made sure that he was dead.
absolutely.
But as it was, he came back to life 14 years later, as we all know. This was quite good for me because a few years ago, a director friend of mine came to me and he said, "Look, great story. Your life as an actor, it's a good story, but also the EastEnders thing. And wouldn't it be lovely if, like EastEnders, you could rewrite your own history to suit your own personal ratings, as it were?" So we wrote a show together called I Shot Dirty Den, which toured, and I took it to Edinburgh. I had fantastic 4 5-star rave reviews. And that was great fun. It was all about my time in EastEnders and how I had him shot, and then was kind of written out of history because that period, that storyline, strangely enough, is kind of has vanished. I mean, the real fans, the real cognoscenti. I mean, you look at it. There are plenty of websites where they hail that as the greatest time in the show, because that was the firm was something. It was something else. It's all become rather domestic now. But. There was a lot of feedback about that. It was great. I really enjoyed it.
Well, I think, even being someone very young at that time, but growing up and watching my soaps when I was younger, that was always seen, Dirty Den was always seen as the greatest soap villain. And I would never forget the shooting of Dirty Den and him falling in, being shot by the canal and stuff. That was being played throughout. It was throughout many kind of, TV, when the montages and that kind of stuff together. And, would that be one of the main things that, especially in that day, you would be recognized for and that people would come up to you for?
Yeah, that and I did 5 years on Lovejoy.
Well, yeah, with Ian McShane. Yeah.
Ian McShane, yeah, as Lord Felsham. So Lady Jane's husband, and that was very interesting because we did all agree at the pre-production time that that Lord Felsham would never actually be cuckolded. He was always there thinking, "Oh, there's Lovejoy in my house again, under my feet again." But in fact, he and Lady Jane never got it together.
So what was it? What was Ian McShane like? Because actually, there's quite a few Bond fans
Yeah,
from who think about Bond in the 80s. Ian McShane would actually have been a very good James Bond.
he would. His problem, and between you and I and our listeners, was he was probably too short.
Right.
Very good-looking guy, swarthy, good black hair, but too short.
That's it. That's
Yeah,
well, there you go. You've got to be tall. You've got to be.
yeah,
That's absolutely
absolutely.
brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, we will pass that back, and we will make sure that people know straight from the mouth of Pavel Douglas, he was too short to be Bond.
But a lovely bloke and great, and we had great fun on Lovejoy. I mean, it was one of those things. It was odd. We did the first series, and then there was a hiatus of 4 years where there were problems with contracts, and I won't go into that because I don't really know enough about it. And then it came back, so we did another 4 seasons after that, and then Lady Jane and I were written out. The show moved on, and I think it did a couple more seasons after that. But it was a wonderful time filming over in Suffolk, and I got to drive some very lovely cars and wear some very lovely suits.
Fantastic. Almost sounds like James Bond driving lovely
Yeah.
cars, wearing lovely suits.
Well, it's a funny thing. I've played a lot of very kind of, dare I say, glamorous people. But my favorites have been glamorous baddies, really.
Yeah,
I mean, even in Doctors, I did a year on Doctors
yeah.
as a chief superintendent of police who had a proclivity for strangling whores. And so, to all intents and purposes, he was a lovely, lovely guy. But towards the end, I think that the viewers will go, particularly to Julia, who was played by Diane Keane at the time, going, "No, no, 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 no! You mustn't go out with him. He's a killer. He's a killer. You must go out with him." And in fact, my wife at the time, her aunt, phoned her up and said, "You've got to leave him. You've got to leave him. I've seen him on TV. He's a killer."
Oh dear. Fantastic. Brilliant.
Police are on the way.
What do you make of that?
Back with them now. Julia, come on. Julia, come on.
But we're here today to celebrate GoldenEye.
Of course.
And you are, the French warship captain. You're in the scenes with the Tiger helicopter based in Monaco. And I was watching it again today, and it's such an iconic scene. Just that introduction of this helicopter that is going to be basically one of the main weapons of the whole film.
Yeah.
The whole scene itself is so glamorous, and it's a time GoldenEye is a statement film in terms of you've not had a Bond film for 6 years before that. There's a lot of questioning, is Bond relevant in post-Cold War? And then GoldenEye comes, and what a film it is. And we just love it. First of all, to just ask you, how did you come about the role?
Do you know, I was actually living in Paris at the time, filming a very long series called Riviera, which we did 260 episodes in 1 year. So we were knocking out 25 finished minutes a day, which was extraordinary.
Oh.
And I got a call from my agent saying that Martin Campbell was in Paris looking for a French actor to play the part of the captain, because he obviously was French.
Of course.
I went and met him, and we had coffee. We didn't know more than that. We just met and had coffee and a chat about the film, and that was that. And then a couple of weeks later, I think I got a phone call saying that Martin was back in London at Eon in Piccadilly, and he was looking at actors, and he wanted to meet me again to read for the part.
Yeah.
So I went and I read for the part, and he was there. He was delightful, and Barbara was there too. And we chatted, and then I read for the part, and he gave me notes, and I read it again. He asked me to read it again and be less French, if you will. So I did that, and then I did ask him. I said, "Forgive me, you were in Paris, as I know, and you were casting for French actors to play the part, quite rightly. Why did you not choose a French actor for it?" And he said, "Well, to be frank, my dear Pavel, they tend to act." So, I've always said you don't act, you be.
Brilliant.
If I'm directing actors, I don't direct film, but I direct a lot of theatre. If I don't want my actors to act, and I think that he didn't want his actors to act either. He just wanted them to be the person, to be the character. And it was wonderful. I was greatly chuffed to spend a week in Monte Carlo.
Well, I mean, if you're going to choose a Bondian place to be, that's the place to be, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Absolutely.
An extravagant setting on the front with like a party, a big helicopter, sunny skies. It's everything you want from a James Bond
I'll
film.
tell you a very funny story about that. I was actually walking down the docks one day, and with someone I knew. It was a French voiceover who was down there, and he goes, "Pavel, do you have a yacht in Monte Carlo?" I said, "Oh, I wish." He said, "Oh, you should get yourself a nice big yacht." I said, "Well, actually, for the moment, I have one." And he goes, "Which one?" And I pointed to the warship, and I said, "That one there."
Brilliant. Absolutely great. That's fantastic. So you were on Monte Carlo, you were on a set for about a week, did you say?
Yeah, it's about a week. Yep. It was the principal photography had only just started. Those are the first scenes that were filmed.
Oh, right, of the whole film.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
There had been nothing before that. It after France, it moved back to England, back to Leavesden,
Yep.
where they built the set of St. Petersburg.
Mhm.
For the tank sequence, because they couldn't have that happening in the streets of St. Petersburg. It wouldn't the infrastructure wouldn't take it, apparently, but they built all that and all the canals and the rest of it. That was the first week of filming, and it was very lovely. I flew out on we had a chartered plane. We all flew out on chartered plane together. And I'll let you have this story. It's worth telling. A friend of mine had worked with Pierce many years before, when they were much younger, which was straight out of drama school, I think. And when he heard that I got the part, he said, "Oh, you must give Pierce a message from me." And I said, "Yeah, of course I will." I said, "Depending on the message." He said, "No, you've got to give Pierce the message." So, and I wonder if I can let you. Yeah, I'll tell you the message. The message was, "Congratulations for getting Bond. Really, really sad to hear about Cassie, his wife who had died previously. And dare I say, you're a fucking lucky Irish bastard." And I said, "I can't say that to the leading man of them." He said, "You've got to. You've got to, otherwise we're not friends anymore." So we were. I was on the plane, and Pierce came on and walked down, and he walked past me with Sean, his son, and they sat in the seats behind me. And I thought, is this the moment? Do I turn around and say, "I've got a message from Peter"? And I thought, no, I can't do it here. Then we got to Cannes, and we got off the plane, and we were getting our luggage off the carousel. And even if you're a film star, you have to get your own luggage. It's the law, somebody else can't claim your bag. So I was standing beside Piers. We're waiting for our luggage, and I thought to myself, "Is this the moment?" I asked. Tell them, no, this is not the right moment either. And the luggage came round, and his was virtually the last bag to come off, because I have no idea. Anyway, he got his bag, and he said, "Have you got your bags yet?" And I said, No, I haven't." He said, "Oh dear, I hope they come soon." And as it happens, they'd lost my luggage. We went to the hotel, stayed at the hotel, and that we had a lunch that day, the day of arrival in Cannes. We had a lunch down on the docks in Monte Carlo,
Yeah.
where everybody was going to be introduced to everybody else. And Pierce came round and was shaking everyone's hand. And he came to me, and I said, "Oh, I've got a message from your dear friend Peter." And he said, "Oh, I didn't say Peter. I said, I've got a message for you from someone you used to know." That's right. And he said, "Oh, I can't just now. I'm a bit busy, but I'll see you. I'll see you in a bit. And after lunch, we'll meet. You tell me the message." So we had lunch, and then he came over and he said, "Right." He said, "Who's the message from?" I said, "No. First of all, the message." He said, "All right." I said, "Congratulations on getting the bond. Really, really sorry to hear about Cassie, and you're a fucking lucky Irish bastard." And he railed for a moment. He said, "Who said that?" And when I gave him the name of the person who said it, he said, "Oh my God, Peter! I love Peter. He's one of my greatest friends." He said, "I tell you what, I'll see you later in the bar."
Oh,
That was lovely. As it happened, my luggage was very late in arriving, and I was stuck in my room in the clothes that I'd arrived in. And they eventually turned up, and so I changed, and I went down into the foyer to meet everybody else, and hopefully have dinner. And I got down there, and it was empty. Everyone had gone, and I thought, okay, Billy No Mates, here we go. You know, who do I don't know anyone to call. I know, I'm here in Monte Carlo. I tell you what, I'll just have another drink, and I'll have room service bring something to my room. So I'm sitting there cradling my drink when I will become aware of a body come slipping in and sitting on the seat next to me. And I look over and it's Pierce.
oh,
I said, "Hello, what are you doing here?" He said, "Oh, they put me into some really stuffy hotel up the road. I hated it there." He says, "I wanted to be down here with you guys." So he said, "I came down here, but everyone's gone except you." I said, "Yeah, they've all gone." He says, "So what are you doing?" I said, "I've no idea." He said, "Do you want to come out for dinner?" I said, "I'd love to."
oh.
So we went, got in his car, and then we spent the next few evenings together, going around to the casino in Monte Carlo, where as we walked in, there was a pianist sitting in the dark, just furgling away any old tunes. And as soon as out of the corner of his eye, as soon as he saw Pierce walk, he just segued straight into dun 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 dun.
Oh my word.
And then I remember one evening we left a restaurant, and some girls spotted him. And before you knew it, there were about 20, 30 girls all screaming, running. And we had to run away. And we got to the car, and Brian the driver, he couldn't open the doors. He couldn't open the doors on this big Mercedes. And then finally they opened, and we piled in. And all the little girls were pressed against the glass like that. I said, "Now, Piers, you must know what it's like to be one of the Beatles."
Oh my word. You sure they weren't for you, Pavel? No.
Oh, they may have been. I doubt it very much.
That's incredible. I mean, it's just so great to hear stories of Pierce. Everybody we speak to talks about what a down-to-earth man he is, and
Oh, totally. I mean, even some weeks later, when he was still he was filming in Leavesden, and I was back at my flat with, I was single that time with my young children, and my son. I was in the kitchen cooking dinner. And my son came running through to the kitchen. He goes, "Dad, Dad, it's James Bond on the phone." And I went, "Oh, don't be so silly." He said, "No, don't, honestly, Dad, it's James Bond on the phone." So I went through, picked up the phone. I said, and it was Pierce. And I said, "Hello." He said, "I just wanted to check in and say how things were and how you're doing." I said, "Well, how are you doing?" He said, "Oh, I don't know. They keep, he made it very plain about this about Judi Dench. She was as scared as he was. This was their first Bond together."
Yeah.
And I said, "What's the matter? Are you having a case of the Emperor's new acting?" And he said, "Absolutely. I'm actually imposter syndrome. I don't think I'm good enough for this." I said, "You are. You are handsome. You are fabulous. You are funny, and it's going to be a cracking show." And it was.
It was superb. Oh,
Yeah.
what an amazing story. And I think, for Pierce, what a great debut. What a brilliant debut of Bond
Yeah.
film. Just went from
He
straight.
didn't. I have to admit that he didn't have the best of luck with the scripts. I think that the invisible card did it for me. I went, "Oh no, come on."
But I think he's been unfairly tarnished by that. You know, it's not he was a phenomenal Bond,
Yeah,
and the script isn't his fault, is it? And I
no,
think a lot of fans now unfortunately associate that era with him, and that's not his fault
it's not.
because even in that
No,
even in that film, even in Die Another Day with all its faults, he gives as good a performance as he possibly could.
oh, absolutely, absolutely. No, I mean Sean Connery was I'm sure be Pierce's favorite Bond, certainly my favorite Bond.
Yeah.
But I thought that Pierce embodied so much of that early Bond. The very not such a big sense of humor as Roger Moore, not those silly throwaway lines, but he still had some lovely little jokes. Just that little moment when he's in the tank and he just adjusts his tie. Just little tiny little moments like that were lovely, and I think, and he looks great on screen. I mean, he looked fantastic in that, in the speedos and in all that sort of stuff. He was really, really good looking guy.
Have you seen the recent pictures of him by the car? He's done a new shoot with the Aston Martin Vanquish, the invisible
Yes,
car.
yes, yes. Yeah,
And
I've seen
and
those.
like the internet is just blowing up saying basically, let's get him back and do an old man Bond film and all these kind of
Yeah,
things.
yeah.
I mean, you can't deny he looks the part still.
Yes, he does. He
Yeah.
does.
So I take it from what you're saying, you were actually a Bond fan growing up.
Oh, totally. As a boy, I even made my own gadgets. I made little tiny smoke bombs that you pressed and they. I had a little starting pistol that was looked like a Walter PPK,
Oh,
and I got my mother to get me some chamois leather, and I made a holster. This sounds so keen, doesn't it? I had a 7-inch reel-to-reel Grundig tape recorder, and I would record bits of the films and the music. And I learnt this was before I actually, because I ended up splicing tape,
yeah.
professionally later. But I taught myself how to splice tape, and I made my own Bond tape with clips and music and bits of dialogue and stuff like that, and I would play it in my room.
Oh, that is amazing. That is so good. Some of the lads who I do the Really 007 podcast with, they had the old handheld recorders when they were growing up, and they created their own Bond films.
Oh, great.
So
Good.
they did the stuff in their house, but when they went on holiday, they would take
Right.
the camera with them, and they would get like Bond location shots and stuff on holiday. Absolutely fantastic. So you'd say that Sean Connery was your favorite Bond. Would you say that you had a favorite Bond film growing up?
Totally. I have my all time favorite Bond film is From Russia with Love,
What a film.
because it had that real kind of Cold War
Yeah.
spy feel to it. The gadgets were really good. The briefcase
Yeah.
was superb. I mean, it was one of those. It was one of those films where the gadgets kind of came into their own because they were there, not because they were designed for the particular film. So many gadgets subsequently. He could have had that 4-minute underwater breathing thing in his pocket for years and never use it.
Yes,
But
absolutely.
it came into use because he happened to be in that situation. But that briefcase, you could see that was a briefcase that would have been issued to all the double O's. This is the briefcase. And so it had the pop out knives and the bits and the smoke bomb inside and then of course that extraordinary fight sequence on the train, which my father-in-law said when he went to see it when that film first came out in the cinema. He said the entire cinema rose as one and cheered and applauded at the end of that fight sequence. So yes, it's and even that wonderful moment when the guy climbs out of the little window of the hoarding
Yes.
of the girl climbs, her eye opens and he climbs
Sniper.
down and he shoots him with that one. Just moments like that, I think, were pure Bond.
Agree.
The subterranean stuff when he's underneath the embassy with the periscope,
Pure
all the
espionage, isn't it?
real proper espionage stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
It's an incredible film. It really is.
Before it became too far-fetched, before it became, lasers from outer space and, all that sort of stuff,
I mean, I love that too. I've got to be honest, but that's the
Well,
beauty.
GoldenEye was a bit of a laser from outer space, it has to be said, but it
Well,
was slightly more plausible than what was the one that Roger Moore did when he went into outer space and
Moonraker.
yes,
Oh,
Moonraker.
I mean, I know that the purists
Yeah,
don't enjoy it, but I've got to be honest. I can put that on and have a right good time with
yeah,
Moonraker.
yeah, yeah.
I love
No,
it.
so I would think From Russia with Love definitely my favorite Bond. GoldenEye has got to be my second because hey, association. And I love the last few that have the new Bond that they would
Yep.
superb, superb, superb.
So it must be like when you get casted in a Bond film and you're a massive Bond fan, someone who's splicing video montages when you were younger, this must be surreal to you, or at least feel like such an honor.
Oh, it was just brilliant, absolutely stunning. I mean, I always wanted to be James Bond. I knew I would never be James Bond, but I always wanted it. And then to be in a Bond film, even as small as part as it was tremendous. And I'm now part of the Bond family, and I get invited to, events and signings and all that sort of stuff. But
Wow.
which is great, and I got sent I can't remember how many, about 1,000 cards, little photo cards that I had to sign, which are available. They're out there, folks. You may even have one. You had to sit down and sign 1,000 times. Yeah,
Wow. I mean, that's incredible.
but yeah, to be part of the Bond family is something else.
But you say that it's a small part, but it's very distinct. I mean, you've got a very distinct, pure voice. Your voice really carries, especially with the lines you say. And I don't know if I should do this or not, but for a long time, me and my brothers used to always quote how you introduce the two pilots because I can't. Listen, I'm going to butcher this, but whenever they say like Commander Marshal Bear and Colonel Francois Voom or whatever, that to me, I'm like, oh, I mean, that is honey to listen to.
Now please welcome the pilots. Lieutenant Commander Bernard Jobert and Lieutenant Francois Brou.
That was quite a sequence to film, and I had nerves about it simply because it was a massive wide shot.
Yeah.
And they'd set up cars to come down the mountain road. They had cyclists coming this way. They had boats speeding across the water. There was, no real opportunity to cock up halfway
Yeah.
through because the process of resetting everything, getting everything back to number ones before you could go again, was enormous. I mean, we did it. Obviously, we did it quite a few takes on it, but I didn't want to be the one responsible for blowing the scene and having to start again.
Well, you certainly didn't. I mean, you did an absolutely brilliant job. And obviously, you've got this Tiger helicopter. And I mean, I have to show you this. I spent 3 months building this last year.
You are indeed.
I got like a Revel set, and it came with all these little plastic bits, and I had to stick it together and paint it. And so to be talking to Mr. Tiger Helicopter is
Fabulous.
this is
Well,
this is brilliant.
I'm honored. I'm honored. Thank you.
That's fantastic.
What you are about to see in operation is Europe's answer to the electronic battlefield. The first working prototype of the Tiger helicopter. Uniquely maneuverable, the Tiger not only uses stealth technology, it is the only helicopter to be hardened against all forms of electronic interference, radio jamming, and electromagnetic radiation.
So you said that Barbara was also in the casting. Did you have any dealings with Michael G. Wilson or even Cubby himself?
Only at that opening lunch where everybody was very lovely and we all met each other and shook hands. Then on the very last day, when I was leaving and was put in a car to go back to Cannes Airport, Michael said, "Would you mind very much if I shared the car with you because I've got to go to Cannes?" And so the whole of the journey, we sat and we talked about the whole Bond thing, the entire franchise. We talked about all the product placement that goes on, and all the people that are queuing up to have their cars and their gadgets and their computers as part of the film. He was an absolutely delightful chap, and the journey to Cannes just flew by.
So good.
And you know, he always plays a part in each film too. You know that, don't you?
Oh, he does. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
that is one of the things that we're going to miss the most now that Amazon have taken over. That
Yeah.
well,
Well, perhaps they'll get him in.
it'd be brilliant if they could. It'd
That'd
be
be good.
so
Be
much
good.
fun. And obviously, your scene featured Xenia Onatopp, Famke Janssen as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, she is one of the most distinguished Bond girls of the whole series, most definitely.
Well, we had lunch together every day.
You're joking. Oh,
You know, shooting a feature is not like shooting, you know, low end TV. There's a bit of money flowing around, and shooting in France, in particular, French always have a proper lunch. Everyone sits down, everyone stops and sits down. So there's none of this, you know, sandwich on the hoof and you're on to the next scene. We all stopped and had a real proper 1 hour sit down lunch with wine, really lovely food in a marquee on the docks just by the ship. And Famke and I and Isabella often we used to just sit and chat over lunch. It was, you know, I thought I died and gone to heaven as the line
yeah.
in the film goes.
I bet you did. Wow.
I have a small surprise from your friends back at the barracks.
You think I've gone to heaven?
Not yet.
Just incredible. I'm sorry, I'm just absolutely blown away by this.
Both very beautiful women.
Absolutely incredible women, and both fantastic characters as well.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I know Xenia she's far-fetched in some ways, but you know, she's very comical and fantastic in what she does. But Natalia is for me, one of the best Bond characters in the whole series. That because she's ultimately just a civilian who gets caught up in fire, and all of a sudden is having to run away from
Absolutely.
Giannis and stuff. It's phenomenal.
And exceedingly believable. You know, we started this by talking about acting or not acting, but
Yeah.
it's exceptionally realistic and believable.
I'm guessing you attended the premiere. Did you go on any of the promotion tours or anything for the film?
I did both premieres. I did the cast and crew premiere, which was an afternoon screening at the Odeon in Leicester Square.
Wow.
And I took my son, the same son who said, Dad, is James Bond on the phone. And he was what? He must have been about 9 at the time. So what a thrill! And he got to meet Martin Campbell and shook him by the hand and made his day, which was great. And so he loved that. And then we had the premiere. And again, I phoned up Pierce and I said, "Oh, I've got to come to the premiere." He said, "You'll need a car to arrive in." And I went, "Oh, God, I suppose I will." He said, "Don't worry, I'll speak to Brian, his driver. Brian will arrange a car for you." And at that time, I was going out with a rather bonkers girl who I couldn't trust to come with me to something as prestigious as that. Because I didn't. She'd blow it. I know she would. She'd have a drink too many and blow it. But I phoned up a dear actress friend of mine, very beautiful, a actress called Paris Jefferson, who's doing many things now. And I said, "Paris, I'm got to go to the Bond premiere. Would you accompany me?" And she fell over herself. Of course I would. And she, boy oh boy, she got her aunt to get her the most fantastic frock. And we turned up all tucked up, you know, driving through the crowds. I mean, I've never been to a premiere before. I've never been to one since. And it was a fabulous occasion, you know, all the flash guns popping as you got out of the car and then going in. And then we had the reception at the Imperial War Museum afterwards, amongst all the tanks.
That is incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a different world, isn't it? It really is, just hearing about it.
Yeah.
And like the legacy of this film 30 years on, I mean, for me, I think it's one of the blueprints that should be taken when we think about a new Bond film. Because the whole question of where does Bond go, especially after Craig's Bond passed in the last film.
Yes, that's an interesting one that they actually killed him completely.
It's very divisive.
So he doesn't regenerate like, you know, we assume that James Bond does, you know, like Doctor Who, into different actors, because he's never actually ever died at the end of a film.
No, and I think the fandom is very split on it. Some people think it's a very brave decision. I suppose it is brave. Some people are quite divided on it, and it does also bring up that question. Then some people would say, "Well, that was Craig's Bond," but I've never seen. I've always seen James Bond as a single character, and it's so when you start thinking, "No, but he's died,"
Yeah.
I get into realms of
Well,
well,
you know that I sent you, I sent you that link about the podcast.
absolutely, yes,
And that's a very interesting premise
yeah,
that Bond is the James Bond or 007 is merely a cipher. That there have been countless Bonds in between the Bonds that we know and love, in between Roger Moore and Timothy Dalton, in between Sean Connery and Roger Moore, there were other Bonds. And that's a very interesting idea, and that's one that they might able to sort of work into this concept now. That okay, it's just another person now, but his field name is James Bond, and his number is 007, but he doesn't have to be the same person.
So it's that idea that it's a code name, I
But it's
suppose.
a code name. I mean, like Felix Leiter. Felix Leiter is Felix Leiter in so many films, but he's very rarely played by the same actor.
No, you can't
So
disagree.
one can assume that Felix Leiter is a field name for an operative.
I mean, when I listened to this podcast, I thought it was a fantastic, just a very original, witty kind of script. And we'll send a
Yeah,
link around to people to they
that'd be
can
great. Thank you.
that 'cause yeah, it was really good. But what do you think about the legacy of GoldenEye? And why do you think it, for something that was very set in the 90s, it's probably timeless?
Mhm.
Uh,
I mean,
and
yes, I know. I've never really considered it. I mean, you brought it to mind the legacy of that particular film. I've always thought that the legacy of all Bond films was something, rather than pinpointing any particular one. Because it was Pierce's first one, I think is important, I guess, in the same way that each of the Bonds has had their introduction film, haven't they?
sure, yeah,
And we could consider any one of those to be a legacy. But um, again, I just think the style of that of GoldenEye, it's that 90s thing about Russia. For example, I went back to Poland in 1989 for the first time
wow,
after the Berlin Wall came down, and I really, really felt that Eastern Bloc feeling.
yeah,
Um, I remember going through passport control in Warsaw when I just touched down. It was just a couple of months after the Berlin Wall came down, and there was a real iron curtain. There's this
Hmm.
enormous clanking steel door opened, and I went into a space, and the clonk shut behind me, and a camera went taking photographs of me from above, and then another big steel door clunk opened, and I was on the other side, and I was then what would have been the Eastern Bloc, as it were. So still a feeling of that in GoldenEye. It's a
Yeah.
leftover feeling of what it's like. I don't know about Russia today. It might well still be the same.
Hmm. That's a good point,
Well, I
that.
mean, I have worked in Moscow and St. Petersburg in the last few years, and it's once you're there, it feels very much like any other city in Europe,
Yeah,
except it's immensely polarized. There are some exceptionally wealthy people who have armed guards with them at all times, and some destitute poor who will sell you the innards of an alarm clock just for the next meal. It's a very polarized society. America is a very polarized
yeah,
society too. They're immensely rich and immensely poor. But there's a feeling in GoldenEye. It's that same feeling I think that I got from Russia with Love. It's that same kind of being in a different world feeling.
yeah,
It's not necessarily a comfortable world that we recognize. The high street isn't the same. The hotels aren't the same. It has that feeling. I mean that Joe driving that Trabant, and through the streets of and it's all smoke and dirty snow everywhere and stuff. It just felt great.
yeah. It is. It's an amazing film, and I think that going on that point of in terms of where you say about the Iron Curtain, a lot of the characters, especially the Russians, so Oromov, Valentin Sokovsky, the Robbie Coltrane's
Hmm,
character, they are remnants of the Cold War in a lot of ways, aren't
absolutely.
they?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Orimov is a wonderful character, I think.
To me,
Yeah,
most important character of the film. And I know
yeah.
that sounds a really odd thing to say, but I think he is that kind of link to show that the question that Bond can he survive the Cold War, post Cold War, and
Mm,
Bond can, and Oromov
mm,
is that one who gets left behind. And I think I think he's such an important character in the film. Yeah, just a phenomenal character. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so
it's all
much.
right. Right.
Thank you so much for just coming to chat about GoldenEye.
Just because I'm here with you, I'm going to give you a little treat
Go on.
that no one knows about, but you will now, and your fans will know. It's not credited on the end credits, but I also got to revoice the croupier in the casino scene. So when you listen to it again, messieurs dames, faites vos jeux. Les jeux sont faits.
7 de la banque. Madame wins. Mademoiselle? No. Monsieur. Let's, ladies and gentlemen. The players?
Banco.
It appears we share the same passions. 3, anyway.
I count 2. Motoring and baccarat.
8 pour la banque. 7. Madame wins.
I hope the 3rd is where your real talent lies.
One rises to meet a challenge.
Martin asked me when I went in to do some ADR for the captain of the warship, and I was at Pinewood, and I met Sean Bean, and we had a lovely chat. And he said, "Look, Pavel, why you're here? Because your French is really good. Could you do revoice the croupier for me?" So I said, "I'm delighted, of course." So you've got a little extra present from me today.
Oh, that is incredible. That is amazing. When you just said it there, I was like, yeah, of course it was you. Yeah. Oh, thank you so much. Pavel, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for your
Lovely
time.
to meet you.
Yeah, lovely to meet you too. Thanks a lot, Pavel. Really.
Bye now.
See you
Bye-bye.
later.
Madame stands with 5. 6. Madame loses.
The hatch. Enjoy it while it lasts.
The very words I live by.